That's not a pond. They always say that.
Decidedly not a pond.
I mean, yeah, decidedly not a pond.
By the definition, no.
No.
It's
Yeah,
not.
by
You just read,
definition,
yeah.
definitely not.
Very much an aphotic zone.
Right. Ah, there you go. Nice. I just won't look at that one.
Wonder how far St. John's is from Sydney or Victoria. How wide is Canada at the southern border?
Wait, which one's this one?
I think it's
not,
4K. 4K.
Really?
4K
Right.
miles per kilometers. I can't remember. It must be miles.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got to be miles.
Because there's a. Well, I don't know where mile 0 is. Mile 0 here in Victoria, or
And the easternmost part of Canada's got to be St. John's, right?
it's just south of St. John's in Cape
Yeah.
Spear.
The moment, yeah.
I've been there.
The other
Yeah,
one's not,
you're
though.
right.
That's
one's
his claim to
good.
fame.
Yeah,
It's not that.
yeah, and it's windy there.
Yes.
Oh man,
It's flat. There's no rocks. There's no trees. There's
yeah.
nothing. It's just the easternmost, windiest point.
And then westernmost has got to be, well, I mean, you should stay at about the same latitude to really measure width, right?
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, that is the
So
easternmost.
it's probably like Rupert or somewhere. At a,
Well, no, Haida Gwaii. Somewhere.
yeah.
Cape, what's that? Langara Point, I bet.
Mm.
So Langara Point is that sort of like pointy thing sticking out of
Yeah.
Haida Gwaii.
It's strange. The size of Canada has not been a consistent unit of measurement because I remember when the USSR was still around,
Yeah.
Canada was the second largest, but then the USSR
It's really
dissolved,
just get
and
rid of
Canada
that,
was the
right?
first, but now the second
You
again,
get rid of
even though
that,
they've not
and then-
acquired. I think they're second now, right?
I don't know. I don't know if Russia got, Russia's,
Yeah.
taking bits and pieces of everywhere.
We need to have
We want this peninsula.
a layback calculator. Right, just like, it's like, well, you got this much out, but you're only this deep, so you're
I have that here if you need it, Greg.
a layback calculator?
Yeah, I think so. ROV math.
No, we're looking at one of the ROV pilot, Grafana,
Oh, right.
not a sponsor.
Slope calculator, layback, Pythagorean theorem layback.
Yeah.
Clump depth, distance from A-frame, estimated wire out, and then gives you the angle.
Well, something's wrong because my depth is already deeper than my payout.
So I guess if you measure the width of Canada at the north, it is 9,300 kilometers wide. So from, maybe they're going diagonal though. Cape Columbia on Ellesmere Island in Northwest Territory at 83 degrees north. Huh. Uh-oh.
So do we have
Small font.
a decided difference for swamp versus pond?
Ooh, for swamp versus pond.
Yeah. Right, because a swamp, everything's in the photic zone.
I think a swamp is more of a rivery kind of thing than a lakey kind of thing.
All right, I have a better source now.
Being have ponds on
Yeah.
lakes.
Scientific.
I thought so.
Yeah, it's right up there with squishy and crunchy.
Yeah. This is how we do in the Roman
Which we've
lab.
heard from a large number of biology professors is a real thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that most swamps actually have a slight current. Like there's a direction of flow.
Yeah, a swamp is a flooded river, right? Whereas a pond, I don't think That was another definition that I've heard of lake and pond too, is lakes are river or stream fed, and ponds are just kind of stagnant rainwater collecting deals. But as we've seen, there's
multiples.
multiple definitions.
All right, so the next one is boat versus ship.
Oh, that one's
You
pretty
know it
easy.
when you see it. That's my definition.
You can put a boat on a ship.
But you can't put a ship on a boat, yeah.
Right. So it just depends
don't
on
know.
how much money you're willing to spend to
Yeah.
push that definition. Were you in, I think it was Tampa with us, Greg, when we got a tour of that oil field service vessel docked right in front of us?
The giant one with the...
Two ROVs, yeah. Yeah, that's the kind of vessel that ONC would benefit from. Fill that back deck.
You get a lot done.
You would get a lot done.
Get a lot done.
Plus you have a helipad.
Crew changes, yep.
Yep.
Helicopter crew changes are not nice. Not nice. Exciting for about the first 5 minutes, and then
That's it, yeah.
then it's kind of loud, noisy,
I
and,
find-
shaky.
I flew in helicopters in the military, and they just wear you out. The vibration's exhausting.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you got to wear the full survival suit as well. Like, it's hot and
Trying to find
Shows that the pilot has a lot of confidence.
yeah.
When they issued me the flight gear in the Army, they, after telling me how safe Army aviation was, they give you a Nomex flight suit and gloves and a crew member's helmet, and they take your ID card from you. And they use, back then, this whole, like, Dymo turn the dial label maker. And they put a sticker on the back of your helmet, and you're like, well, that's nice. Now I won't get mine mixed up with anyone else's. So you get your helmet, you look at it, expecting to see your last name, and it says, O positive.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a reason to do helicopter crew changes, that you have to practice escaping from a upside down helicopter underwater.
Now, is that called a
Seven.
Bosset? What is that?
That's
sort
a
of
Bosiet.
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 It's hard, yeah.
And then the Bosiet you can refresh with your FOIT, which is a one-day course.
Right.
Bosiet's 3, the
Yeah.
FOIT's 1. But the Hewitt is what you do, the helicopter underwater escape training.
Mm-hmm.
So they put you in a mock helicopter,
Put you in a
strap
pool.
you in, put you in a pool, and then turn it
flip
upside
you
down,
over.
and then you got to...
Because that's what
Practice
happens
get.
to helicopters in water, because the
All the
heavy
weight's up
bits
top.
are up top. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
By the Jesus nut.
It's kind of fun. I like doing Hewitt training.
Yeah, I've got to find a place in the Pacific Northwest that offers that.
There isn't one, I don't think. It's
They're
really
looking
hard
to,
to find.
they're trying to build one up in Bellingham.
Oh yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, it would be nice.
That would be perfect, in
Yeah.
fact. Renew all the certs there at the moment. I don't know.
But otherwise, you got to send somebody down to
Either
Gulf.
Texas
Yeah.
or
yeah,
I mean, I don't know.
Louisiana.
So
One in St. John's.
I found just going back to the pond thing, I found a dictionary in Newfoundland English. And
Oh,
a pond is a natural body of still water of any
there you
size.
go. Huh.
And they
They-
go back to, it's really nice because they have the I don't know,
Hey,
whatever. It's got the history
yeah.
of the word. But
Where
it's
does that word come from?
1612, and this Willoughby guy is talking about it, and it's something he's written there. And I'm just parsing through it down to the, he does mention that is that 20-mile pond, so called from its being that space in circumference from its magnitude properly is a lake. The lakes and ponds abound with trout, and flocks of wild geese annually visit them. Wait, there was something else I was going to get here. Yes, in another section down there it says, rivers being called brooks, and in Newfoundland, and lakes, ponds. So in 1612, they're commenting that the people in Newfoundland are calling, who are the people in Newfoundland in 1612? I'd like to know, but they're calling them
The
rivers,
obviously.
rivers, brooks, and lakes, ponds. So it's
Right.
well, but I'm just trying to figure out who was living.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, sorry. I missed
And
another.
how did they stop shivering long enough to pronounce anything?
No,
Oh, that may be why they went down from a 2-syllable word to a 1-syllable word.
Yeah, it's quicker to get out.
Yeah.
you know, sorry, it's from 1811. That comment is from 1811. So there's some people living there. And the comment about the proper size of lakes is from actually 1794.
Yeah, there you go. Nice.
So there's a little bit of argument back and forth. But they, for some reason in Newfoundland, definitely ponds are these big giant, are lakes. And I don't think you can ask Mike, right? Is there any lakes in Newfoundland? I've never heard of a lake in Newfoundland.
Yeah.
Or a river.
This just reinforces why learning history in American schools is so easy, because it's like, okay, so in 1492, and you can skip
don't get me
1,500 years of history, just jump right ahead. It's like the chutes and ladders of history. The places on the west coast of the U.S. that are on the historic record, you know, recorded as historic monuments were built in like 1870.
Ancient.
Yeah, we've got a courthouse from 1910, which is a big deal.
My sister's house was built before your country was
in
its modern state.
I just read a thing that the most common national holiday in the world is celebrating independence from Britain. That's true.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
What is it, comedian James MacArthur? He's got a short sketch on stuff that's in the British Natural History Museum, like in the British museums.
Yeah.
It's like, it's your stuff, but we nicked it, so now it's ours.
There's actually been a fair amount of return of national antiquities lately, as people are more aware of that.
Yeah, there's still, I know, like there are places in Egypt that are trying to get different statues back so that they can, because it's like, you know, one statue was
Sphinx's
taken.
nose.
Yeah.
The Sphinx's nose was in the British Natural History Museum. No, not the National History Museum. British Museum for God knows how long.
Yeah, they're like, you know, like, look at, this is what it looks like, but this is what it should look like if you put back this statue, this upper half, and this. And they all exist in, you know, museums around the world, and they're like, we'd like them back, please.
Yeah.
That makes sense. At this point, we can basically make a mock of anything and put that in the museum and bring back the real thing.
Right. And there might have been misguided thoughts that if we take this back home and protect it, it will be preserved. And now it's like, yeah, just give it back.
You're fine.
Well, I think when poor old Baghdad was overrun, I think there was
museum there,
a huge bunch of stuff, which is, you know, the cradle of civilization. That stuff is really old, and that's, I imagine a lot of that is in the public domain of art people, because wealthy art people. I haven't heard much about it recently, though, what got lost and what.
Can everyone please say hi to my wife, Charity, who's listening right now?
Charity?
Charity, my wife.
Hi, Charity.
Hi, Charity.
Hello, Charity.
Wait, today's Sunday, yeah?
Thanks, people. Thanks, folks.
I work with Oliver 12 hours a day. I understand how you must feel.
Very good. I tried not to laugh at that.
She's like, he's your problem now.
Right.
She says hi back.
She's just tuning in to find out more about these headsets that let us turn you down. How does that work again? Where's Charity from?
She's from Sydney.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Born and bred. There used to be a
Wow.
hospital there, and she was born in that.
Where was that hospital in Sydney
Rest
at?
Haven, yeah.
I didn't even know there was a
There used to be a long, long time ago.
Wow.
It's gone now, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is interesting the way to meet Charity over we're practically neighbors.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. The voice you can hear, Char, is Steve, who's one of the scientists at ONC, and
he's on Henry.
Yeah.
On Henry.
Oh, you live on, right, yeah, yeah.
Are you up in Sydney, Steve?
Yep.
Yeah, no kidding.
Probably walked past you a bunch of times. And,
well, you would, because I'm near the path there.
Yeah, right.
Oh man, vampire fish and
Could be some of the only people up past 8 p.m.
Did you call that a vampire fish?
Uh-oh.
It's probably wrong.
You're in trouble.
Called out.
Oh, man.
What are the fish with the big fangs?
Oh, that's a fang tooth.
No.
Of course.
But you're looking at, it's going to be some sort of dragonfish. It was too far away to identify.
Because the fins are bigger on those.
Dragonfish.
Dragonfish, yes. They've got like a barbel that hangs down from their chin, as opposed to like anglerfish that have it sticking out of their forehead area-ish.
Yeah, ish.
Ish.
So maybe Charity could run down to that bakery on the main drag there on the south side and pick something up and send it out to us today. It's
Sydney
Sunday.
Bakery, yeah?
Yeah.
I don't think it's open on Sundays, is it?
Oh, really? What
Sundays
bakery
and
isn't open on
Mondays.
Sundays?
Sundays and Mondays. I don't think it's open. Just, my wife has reminded me, Steve, her mother actually worked at iOS back in the 80s.
Wow.
Yeah.
I started in 92.
Okay.
There. So maybe, what's Charity's last, her maiden?
Magsalin. Would have been Lorena Magsalin, is her mother.
Yeah. Which department?
Oh, I have no idea.
Oh.
She'll, hang on.
Probably not.
Incoming.
Yeah.
Because I don't even know when the actual new building was built, but first it was just that hangar that you see there.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
And it was called
Delicious.
the Pacific Ocean Group or something like that.
Right.
It was too shallow for a Pacific vampire fish,
physics,
apparently.
Pacific Ocean Physics.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
That was it. Yeah, the vampire fish live
Or
really,
deeper.
really deep.
Yeah. 1,000 meters and deeper.
I really like that name for them, though. Some of them
with
do
the
have...
way their face looks, yeah.
Yeah, well, and some of them, they do look very bitey. Some of them have skin that is blacker than black. It is ultra black.
Yeah.
Ultra black.
Ultra black. It absorbs light.
There's a paint they've discovered in the last several years that's like that. Just saw images of a car that got painted with that.
How to get into an accident, 101.
Yeah. Make your car invisible.
So what is a tarn? This is for Ollie, I guess.
What?
A tarn.
Like when we put a turn in the...
T-A-R-N? T-A-R-N?
Turn?
Tarn. In North England,
Oh,
a pond is called a tarn.
God,
a tarn?
Yeah.
I don't know.
At least that was thought
Probably
so in
one of the-
1927.
One of the local dialects, you know.
Yep. One of the fun parts about this job, and I'm going to preface this with, I believe that Ashley was correct, but is finding things where, like we've had, the prickly shark is the one biggest example that comes to mind, but if you look it up at one point, all the information on it said that they were purely solitary, they did not interact with each other, and we've counted like 50 interacting in like a small kind of like ravine as we were going up. And once we identified what it was, and they found the world expert, and they were totally amazed. And
yeah, that can happen.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and one of the things I like so much about being on these dives, because almost all of the information we have on the behavior or ecology of most of these fishes is based on what we know from catching them in nets. And that's kind of a flawed method to begin with, because your nets can only catch a certain size, or depending on how fast you can trawl them, then fish can see and hear and move, so they can get out of the way. So if we aren't in the right area, or our nets aren't big enough, or they aren't fast enough, we aren't going to catch 20 of those prickly sharks at the same time.
Yeah.
And so we assume that if we catch one, they're solitary. And I say assume, it's the best we can do, because we just can't see everything that we would if we were diving and we could see sharks aggregating in shallow waters more easily. So it's really interesting that we can, in one dive, see like 30 seconds of footage that completely
that like rewrites
everything that we know about some of these species. And we're still discovering new species when we are stepping into some of these areas, or we're bringing up samples and then we run genetic analysis on them, and we realize that species that we thought we've been calling the same species forever is actually separated into different types of species. So we're still learning a lot.
Yes.
And that's why we do these vertical transects, is that, this is really, you would never send, they're starting to make cameras now like that you can do that. You do transects or
you want to start lateraling back the other way?
But this is really, you don't get this kind of data, and no one will, rent a ship and an ROV to cycle up and down to take a look at what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, and especially in these midwaters,
what's your main hydraulic pressure?
They're the biggest habitat on the planet, but they're one of the more understudied, because we don't, a lot of people send ROVs down and look at the bottom of the ocean, because that's where a lot of the stuff that we're interested in is. That's where we have like oil platforms, or we're trying to do different sorts of setups like we're doing for a lot of these ONC dives. But we don't really stop and look at what's in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of life here.
Yeah.
And that's why we get those water column samples as well, too, as we're going up and down, get a better understanding of what's in the water at different depths.
Yeah, one of the questions earlier, well, I don't know if you were here, Ashley, but it was what are we seeing here? Is it mostly detritus, or is it mostly animal? No, I looked carefully, and I think it's
it depends. We're seeing probably a lot of both. And when we say detritus, it's also been something that was alive at the surface and is sinking down to depth and will fuel all of the ecosystems below. So when we were sitting below 1,000 meters, no sunlight penetrates those waters, period. So in the surface waters, kind of the base of the food web is all that phytoplankton, and that requires sunlight to grow. And if there's no sunlight, we can't have that source in the deep ocean. So inherently, all of the waters really that we're diving in below 200 meters are food limited, because they're below that photic zone where the sunlight can penetrate and actually be biologically meaningful for photosynthesis. So everything has to sink from the surface. And a lot of that is what we're seeing now with this marine snow, is just organic matter that's sinking down to depth. But there's also a lot of, all of these little specks could be small plankton or copepods or some like zooplankton that's swimming around too.
Yeah.
That we just can't really see because they're small and it's hard to get focus on. We've been.
Yeah, here it's kind of interesting because that question was asked quite a bit deeper, and here you can clearly sort of discern between the two types. There's things that we're going by, and obviously are stationary or sinking, and there are these other guys that are going sideways and stuff like that. And I don't think it's because of the thrusters at this point, but I think that's the partition between, you know, a copepod, or you can sort of see these guys running around, right?
Yes and no. Yeah, a lot of so there are also less mobile living organisms that we're seeing. So even like a lot of the gelatinous material is not particular. It's not super mobile. It's not like fish mobile. They'll move around, but it's just that they're big enough that you can tell that they're kind of alive. Well, they are alive.
But you can sort of guess that it's more like 50-50, right? 50 live and maybe 50% not alive. I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, and there are things like larval fish might be sitting here and they might not be super mobile because they're small.
Yeah. And the other thing is that the lights here, we're moving fast enough that only very mobile critters can come if they wanted to see us, or go away if they were trying to hide.
Yeah, I think most of them are jetting out of our way. So there's probably a lot of stuff that we aren't seeing because they're fast and they're getting out of our way pretty quickly. So I've seen several larger fishes that have zoomed through the field of view faster than we can really see and get identifications off them. And that looked like it might have been an ink cloud that just went through, which would say that there's some sort of squid that was off frame.
Mm-hmm. Would we notice any photoluminescent or bioluminescent organisms in this area?
So there are tons of bioluminescent organisms. Probably we're seeing them right now. A lot of these crustaceans are bioluminescent. The fish that we've been seeing are almost certainly bioluminescent. But we wouldn't be able to pick up on that necessarily because Herc's lights are so bright that they would swamp it out.
We could turn the lights off.
I don't know that our camera would be sensitive to pick it up.
It's picking up black.
Yeah. And that's really...
camera needs at least some light to be able to pick that up, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and a lot of these, but the majority of organisms at these depths do produce some sort of light. So whether that's the crustaceans, the bacteria, the plankton, less
lightning
plankton,
bugs.
Yeah.
So Ed, have you tried that, turning off the camera? The lights? Yeah. And nothing happens? You can't see anything?
Can't see a thing.
Okay.
Well,
we don't have to try
the camera definitely can't see anything. I can look up the minimum lumens for this.
Well, that bioluminescence, even if we were down there with our own eyesight, would we even be able to pick that up ourselves?
Yeah, you should be able to.
Yeah, and people that have been diving in submersibles have been able to see that. And just see flashes of light all around them.
Yeah, like the low level or the low light camera projects that I know about, they are using some LEDs to provide some lighting, but they're like barely. Basically, our camera would almost look black, but that camera will pick up the light provided by the LEDs. And scuba diving tip of the day, if you're doing a night dive and want to see bioluminescence, just take your light and push it up against your body to quench it. Don't turn it off. Not sure it's going to turn back on.
Wait, put the light against your body?
Yeah, just hold it up so you can't see any visible light.
Okay.
And then you can wave your arm around and see the bioluminescence. But that way you don't turn it off and then turn it off, realize it doesn't turn back on. See the bioluminescence, and then your light fails to turn back on.
Yeah. I believe it was last summer, actually, we had the bioluminescent algae that came on shore in Southern California, Los Angeles. It was funny because it was right around the beginning of the pandemic, so I believe this was around May or so, and everybody was supposed to be at home, but it was such a fascinating sight that the whole shore was filled with people. Yeah. And I remember walking out there because I was like, I have to check this out, and everybody was super cautious because we're still like, we're not supposed to be here. They closed all the beaches, but they had some beaches where you had a good amount of people out there watching them, and you can see the bioluminescence in the evening there as the waves were crashing on the shore. It put on a nice fluorescent blue
I don't know if
light
they
show, which was pretty amazing.
made it all the way down south, but off of Oregon and Washington, they've had these blooms of pyrosomes. Is that how what they're called?
Yeah.
Actually?
Yeah, pyrosomes. Yep.
And those are frequently bioluminescent. And even on the Nautilus at night, you could go to the aft end to the transom and look in the wake and see them caught in the wake and lighting up.
So when we cross about 300 meters, we can ask Chris to move the ship forward, and that'll help line us up and such. And then you still have plenty of time to decide where you want to sit for recovery.
So actually, in a location like Marianas Trench, Challenger Deep location, where we're 10,000 plus meters below, will we see a lot of bioluminescent organisms in that region?
So that's a really
sea life would you see there?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question.
I know we have like species of anglerfish and other deep sea.
Yeah, so there are fish that get very deep that will bioluminesce. There are also crustaceans that will bioluminesce in those depths as well. But I should say that in deeper water. But we also have interesting kind of phenomenon where once you get really deep, then bioluminescence, and I'll have to talk to Fabio about it for like invertebrates, but in fishes, it becomes less prevalent the deeper you get. So once you drop below, I don't know, about 1,500 meters, then photophores, so those are the bioluminescent organs, tend to get smaller, and so do eyes. So eyes kind of get smaller, and the kind of hypothesis behind that is that there's not much to see, so why would you waste the effort and the energy to produce an eye? And then if there's no eye to perceive any bioluminescent signal, then why would you produce a bioluminescent signal for something else to see?
But the counter argument to that, though, is sometimes you have things that you never use. For example, turn signals on BMWs.
Exactly, another flashing thing that might not get used. But yeah, in the deeper waters,
now where I thought you were going.
Then you tend to have kind of a regression, and really like a lot of the really elaborate bioluminescent displays happen where there's some sort of mix, like kind of where we are now at about 300, so between 200 and 1,000 meters, where there are still traces of sunlight, and so organisms have to get really creative with how they disguise themselves amongst the little bits of filtering sunlight still in that water. But yeah, I don't know that we have any records of bioluminescent organisms in the Marianas Trench. I don't think any of the species that we've recovered are bioluminescent that we know of. But I'd have to look into that.
So then what about certain aspects like okay, so we have a lot of anglerfish species that are very deep sea, or like viperfish or some other vampire fish species. You'll notice that a lot of them have very elaborate teeth, very sharp teeth, right? But at those depths, you're not consuming large prey, right? So what is the necessity of having
here's the other thing, like is when we say that they are, I'm going to preface this for viewers back home. When you see really those big teeth and you see these fish and you want them so badly to be these giant sea monsters, they aren't.
They're like the size of your
really
thumb.
Small. Yeah,
they're like the size of your pinky.
Yeah. A lot of these really big predators are like maximum, like I get really excited when I collect really big dragonfishes, and when I say really big, I'm talking like they might be a foot long, and that's like, whoa, that one is so big. But most of them, like most of these predatory organisms are pretty small, and their teeth are really big relative to their body size, and they will eat really big meals relative to their own body size, but they aren't eating like whales or any.
but still at that point there's still
they aren't eating people.
Is it necessary to have teeth that big when you're feeding on microplankton and other small?
I think it's about not losing something.
Yes, exactly. It's more a cage. So a lot of things that they also don't have a lot of musculature. So they do have muscles, but it's kind of flabby, and they aren't like swimming around, and they aren't eating like swimming like a tuna would, or like eating like a shark would with the really big bite force necessarily. But we think that it's more that those teeth kind of act as a cage to prevent anything that they do get from escaping their jaws.
And even the larger organisms like sharks, especially like, you know, blacktip reef sharks, a lot of the smaller fish that they consume, they just do it by inhaling the water.
Oh, yeah.
Just rapidly open their mouth, and that suction of the water pulls the prey in.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Nothing
common fish tactic.
Teeth.
Just suck in whatever is in your way and then just inhale it.
Yep. Especially for those species of shark that kind of like carpet sharks that kind of browse along the sea floor.
Yeah.
You know, just kind of maneuvering or moving soil out of the way. They just inhale basically.
You can do like 10 or less, just because he is going to be moving forward. So.
Well, look at that. We got 280 meters left to go. We are almost home.
Greg, were you guys on watch when we got to the bottom, or was it not that long ago?
No, they launched while I was asleep.
Roger.
These are very interesting questions. If humans didn't eat fish, how different would the ecosystems look in the oceans?
Well,
that's
give it 1,000 years and you'll find out.
Yeah.
I wouldn't bother to lateral. You're just going to drop your hydraulic. I wouldn't bother to lateral. You're just going to drop your hydraulic pressure.
Not eating them, which happens a
your
lot.
Flow and with him driving forward, you should be pretty well set.
Yeah.
But we could see those results pretty quickly if we completely stopped fishing whatsoever. Within the next couple of years, we could see quite a drastic increase.
But as of now, any answer to that question is conjecture, really. Or having to go back and try and determine what the impact, what the fish population was like before humans.
Yeah, which is very difficult. Pretty much impossible to be able to fully tell. One, because we probably don't have records of one of the populations of different species that early on.
Yeah, I think they were more concerned with not getting eaten by a woolly mammoth than keeping accurate records. But that's an interesting question. What else you got there? Anyone else? People typing in these really interesting questions.
Another comment on that last one. I think what is it? We're basically fishing down the food chain. So if you just look at it that way, you know, you'd have a lot more of the big guys and the predators and stuff like that, the fish, and then less jellies and the stuff that we don't fish for. Just simple kind of balance like that.
Yeah, and in areas where we've kind of imposed fishing moratoriums before, then we've seen shifts in what we thought the ecosystem was structured like. So in areas where we thought that, I don't know, like a grouper was the top predator and that was just kind of the most abundant fish, or we've thought that like, oh, well, we didn't have very many sharks in this area, so we must not have sharks or need very many sharks in a stable ecosystem. And then once we stop fishing in that area, we've seen masses of sharks that we didn't think would ever be supported in that ecosystem to begin with. So again, it just kind of upended our view of submarine ecosystems as we learn more about all of those systems.
Yep, absolutely. Ooh, but looks like I missed a question here from a viewer from Corvallis, Oregon.
Hey.
I know Corvallis
I know
very
Corvallis
well.
too.
Yeah, Corvallis, shout out to all my folks back in Oregon. PDX, my PDX peeps.
Eugene.
We actually get a lot of these questions in regards to the lasers, and I know we've talked about these lasers before. They're about 10 centimeters apart, correct? On Hercules.
Yep. But, they're parallel.
But
they're mounted to the camera.
Mounted to the camera, and they, you see, it's calibrated for set distances, right? To help with accurate measurements and video imaging with our camera system. So they come into a lot of useful applications when we are traversing up and down and exploring on the seafloor.
One of our former Argus pilots is doing some advanced schooling at OSU in Corvallis.
Home of the Beavers.
Yep.
Oregon State Beavers. One of our Pac-12 rivals.
R meaning UW.
Meaning UW.
Yeah.
The best of the Pac-12 schools.
My brother went to U of O in Eugene, so he's a total duck.
What a duck.
Some interesting, I mean, that's Pac-12. It's not, it gets much weirder on the West Coast. University of California at Santa Cruz. Is it UC Santa Cruz? Yeah, Santa Cruz. I think they're the, I might have to look this up. OSU, they're not, banana slugs, I think is their mascot.
That's their mascot, banana slugs?
Yeah, I think so.
Banana slugs are pretty prominent in that region of California.
Evergreen University in Olympia, Washington is the Gooey Ducks.
The Gooey Ducks?
Yeah.
One of the things on this recovery is to make sure Mark knows that there's cables hanging. Okay.
He loves that surprise.
Surprise, the cables.
Yep, they're still there.
What's at the end? Is there a connector?
Hopefully.
We did that recovery the other day, and whatever we had dangling, there was a connector there. As soon as we got to the surface, it was shooting straight out. Current was ripping.
Ed, have we ever done any expeditions on east coast of the U.S. with Nautilus?
Yeah.
Atlantic?
Nautilus crossed over the Atlantic 2014? 15? 13? And was based out of, I think, St. Pete, Florida. Did some work in the Caribbean, did work in the Gulf of Mexico, I think some eastern seaboard. I think they went over and did some work in the southeast.
And jumped the canal and went to the Galapagos.
Yep. Then went up to their home port in Los Angeles. And, 2 years ago, we went to the South Pacific. We're working with the Republic of Kiribati down there. I don't know if we went to the, we went to Samoa.
Yep.
So.
American Samoa.
And independent Samoa as well.
Yeah. Well, you said Samoa, so I figured.
Yeah, well, all-encompassing Samoa. It's just purely a political division between the islands.
There's plenty of those around the world.
Yeah, there are. Imaginary lines. Not too long ago, independent Samoa changed their name to that because it had been known as Western Samoa. Samoa was actually a site of a major tsunami in 2009 that was generated by a super strong earthquake that lifted the seafloor, I believe, 10 meters.
Oh, wow.
Is just the switch, yeah.
Speaking of which, that's a prayers
but
to all
we try to turn off all the hydraulics and such here through the relays, and then turn it off.
So the American Samoa earthquake or tsunami,
yeah,
that was the first thing that Neptune Canada, or ONC, I guess, did. We turned on the observatory ahead of time. The official turn on was in 2009 December. This tsunami occurred in September,
yep.
I believe.
Yep, you're right.
And we turned on the basically right here where there's a 3 BPRs that are in an array form to measure tsunamis, and we were just at the center of it, and we turned it on ahead of time to capture that
data.
that data and turned it off afterwards, and we we even got a paper out of it. So.
Yeah, there's a super interesting paper written about that was actually on the cover of Nature, and there were 2 researchers at UC Santa Cruz, Thornley, and I can't remember the other person's name, who were able to look at the data on the earthquakes and realize that there was a magnitude 8 earthquake, and then hidden within that magnitude 8 earthquake was another magnitude 8 earthquake that caused that. It was 2 of them.
That's fine.
Yeah, we didn't have the paper that we wrote didn't have that information yet.
Right, it's brand new.
It was pretty well. Yeah. We got it out, captured by the this, and and we had it modeled. Had a modeler run it as well to compare using the incoming wave at our array and how it would impact the coast.
Yeah. NOAA PML produces wave propagation models for tsunamis. And they put those up on YouTube, and it's pretty interesting to see. And it's very much like you would expect, like you'd see in a swimming pool or a bathtub, that when you have an event like that where the seafloor rises or drops, which causes these waves, they then ripple out. When they hit the coastline of land, then they start rippling back to where they came from. Yeah. Yeah, yep. Right. Yeah.
Hey, Ashley, there's an interesting comment in regards to our discussion about fish species and what would happen to different populations. And I've heard about this actually before, the correlation between sea urchins and kelp beds and sea otters. Noticed in a lot of areas where sea otter populations have diminished. Obviously, you get a large influx of sea urchins, and sea urchins are very harmful to kelp bed locations because they feed on the kelp. And the kelp, in turn, provides shelter for a lot of fish species and other organisms. And that's a pretty interesting correlation there. But yeah, we've noticed in areas where sea otter populations have been reintroduced that in turn kelp beds have in turn grown, providing some great habitat much needed habitat for different species.
Yeah, that's a really good example, and that's actually kind of the textbook example of what we call a keystone species.
Yes.
So sea otters are called a keystone species because that species in and of itself has a very large impact on the rest of the ecosystem. So once they were removed from areas of especially around like the Pacific Northwest, then they weren't there to eat the sea urchins. The sea urchins went crazy and ate all the kelp. The kelp was devastated, and all of the fish and inverts that rely on those kelp forests then were threatened because of it. Yeah. So once sea otters started coming back, and so in a lot of cases it's the sea otters went away because of the fur trade. So once we stopped hunting sea otters for their pelts, and once they became listed on like the Marine Mammal Protection Act, I think is what really kind of set that in motion, then sea otter populations have rebounded, and we've noticed that sea urchin populations are decreasing and kelp forests are coming back. And then there's also all sorts of interesting spin-offs of that, because then you have conflicts with fishermen in the area that are so used to the ecosystem that was established in the absence of the sea urchins that then you can have issues where the fishermen are find that the sea otters might be a nuisance and actually might be eating some of the crustaceans that they're relying on. But there's also been research that shows that the sea otters actually are, just by increasing the amount of kelp coverage, are increasing the total number of fish and crustaceans in that area. It just might not be the same species that the fishermen have known to grow in that area in the absence of the sea otters.
Yeah, because what they were fighting was actually a disrupted ecosystem already.
Exactly. So it's
the fish that they were capturing most likely didn't naturally belong in that
region. So while it's unfortunate, and the fishermen obviously have reason to be a little bit upset that now what they've staked their entire livelihood on has shifted, it also might just be as, I don't want to say as simple as, because it's a very complicated issue.
For sure.
But for lack of a better term right now, it could just mean that we have to shift what we're eating and the demand that we're placing on that ecosystem, and then be more flexible with eating what's available in that ecosystem at the time. But yep, that's a really good example.
Yeah, for sure. So for those tuning in, we got about 124 meters remaining on our ascent back on deck after another successful dive. You're tuning in, oh yeah, we always get this question about our speed of our ascent. Our speed is a little bit limited, yes, because Argus and Hercules are tethered together. So we don't want to put too much pressure on the tether as we are ascending up. So we got some sensitive cabling attaching both of our ROVs to the ship, so we are limited by that. But we come up as quickly as we can without putting any extra pressure on our tether that is connected to our ship. What is next? That is a great question. Wouldn't we all like to know? We'll hopefully find out once we get back on deck. We will recover the ROVs. We will take off some of our larval samples that we have on board, and some of our other biological and geological samples. And our team will put together a great game plan of what our next maneuvers will be.
This is when...
Yeah, we're ideally going to do
That's
two
the real
quick
sad story.
dives at Endeavour, but we do have some bad weather coming. So we're going to hopefully get those two quick dives in, and then we'll probably take shelter a little bit closer to shore.
I hope so.
What do you say our transit time was to Endeavour? Here?
5
About
hours.
5 hours, yeah.
Okay. So hopefully we make it to Endeavour before weather gets too crazy, and said get a couple dives in.
We've tried this once before and it hasn't turned out so well.
Yeah, let's check out this windy. What's windy telling us about our current weather conditions?
You can actually get a underlay for windy of where the observatory is, so you can actually see all the sites on the observatory in windy.
Oh.
What is that? What are those files called? KMLs? Any GIS people here?
What
Wait,
file?
Nav. Yeah.
KML.
Is it KML?
Well, is it KML or KMZ?
Might be a KMZ.
In Google, you use KMZ.
Maybe that's it.
This is never right. This is where we're in. Or is that
Wait, Z or Z?
Oh, there we go. Waves.
I think. I say Z.
There we go.
You say Z? Canadian versus American right here. Yeah.
Is this the overlay?
Yeah, we know you're not into red-purple stuff.
The prediction into Tuesday.
Yeah, if you hit swell.
Doesn't look great.
Yeah, it's calling for 3-meter waves.
He wants launch recover, which I do at 75 meters. Nope, I'm waiting. You want now? Okay, ending the transect. Both cameras full wide. Zooms all the way out. You can hit launch recover if you want. That'll give him the quad. I'm not sure why he needs it now. Yeah.
Loud and clear. Okay to recover? Clear to recover. Roger that. Bridge main deck, radio check. Loud and clear, Mark. You okay to recover? Go ahead, yeah. Good, coming up.
I didn't realize we'd taken control yet.